So that brings us to the next coach at Notre Dame, Nathan. You haven't had much time to digest all of this, but do any particular names come to mind that are reasonable requests?
Yeah, I think the two that make the most sense, and probably I think it's actually what's going to end up happening, is either Luke Fickell at Cincinnati or Marcus Freeman, the current defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. Obviously Luke Fickell has said on multiple occasions in reality that either Notre Dame or Ohio State is really the job he would look for to move from Cincinnati, and I think he's proven that. I think he's probably been offered or at least been in high consideration for a lot of other jobs, probably even including the USC and LSU jobs this year, and maybe politely turn them down. And then with Freeman, there's a couple things. I mean, obviously he had the respect of the current head coach, or the former head coach, in Brian Kelly, which I still think will go a long ways with Jack Swarbrick and the other decision makers at Notre Dame, and the idea that he's a young guy that could build something very strong. And the idea, and also the fact that he's brought, kind of a fresh recruiting pitch to Notre Dame that other coaches didn't bring. And I think that that's going to resonate not only with recruits and families and stuff like that, but also in his coaching staff. I think if your head coach is a recruiting dog on the trail, the rest of your recruiting staff and your coaching staff will also be dogs on the trail. And that's one thing that Kelly was sort of, ridiculed for a little bit at Notre Dame, is that he didn't have that mentality to be a top-notch recruiter. And some of the staff that he's brought in, like Marcus Freeman and Mike Elston and Tommy Reese, even, are more like that as recruiters. So I would be very surprised as of right now if it's not Marcus Freeman or Luke Fickell. And I actually am starting to lean towards Marcus Freeman. But before Ben kind of mentions a few names, since he didn't really hear what we were saying, just a few other names that wouldn't necessarily surprise me if they were in the mix. John Harbaugh at Baltimore, if that was ever a job that he thought about leaving and wanted to get into the coaching ranks, maybe face off against his brother. His daughter goes to Notre Dame, is on the lacrosse team. That's always been somewhat of a rumor. Bob Stoops, the same thing, if he doesn't end up somehow taking the OU job, which I don't think he's going to get anyway. I don't think Matt Campbell, to be honest with you, is really a serious candidate. I think they like Luke Fickell and would probably hire Marcus Freeman more, so I wouldn't really put his name in the ring. And I'm sure there's going to be some other names that pop up. I know that Braum at Purdue has always been someone that people have mentioned for the Notre Dame gig. I think he would do really well there as an offensive quarterback guru, and I think he is another guy that's really strong on the recruiting trail. I just don't know if you can sell that right now with how, he's won some big games at Purdue, but he's been there for 4 years now or so, and what have they really done outside of going like 6-6, 7-5 or worse? But I do think he's a guy that would be better at that at a Notre Dame, obviously. But yeah, I think it really comes down to probably Luke Fickell or Marcus Freeman when all said and done.
Then Nathan pretty much covered the coaching gamut in regards to reasonable candidates. I know you didn't catch all of that, but anyone else that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, the only other name that I'd potentially maybe throw in there, and this was rumored, when Brian Kelly was struggling, if you fire Brian Kelly, who do you get? I mean, it's PJ Fleck. I know that that's a name that a lot of people really liked, around 2016. Kind of the same thing that Nathan said about Braum, though. I mean, really, what has he, besides being an exciting guy and a probably a fun guy to play for, what really has he done in terms of accolades? I mean, Minnesota's been good, okay, but is the splash higher that you want at Notre Dame? I don't necessarily think so. So I think there's that, and then there's I threw this out on Twitter just in jest mostly, but Lane Kiffin. I mean, I don't know. Doesn't really, from a personality standpoint, doesn't necessarily fit Notre Dame. I don't think everybody wants to talk about Urban Meyer. I would have said no to that, but
Brian Kelly left for LSU.
Exactly. That would strike me the same exact way. Exactly.
Yes.
Another name that I didn't think is Matt Rule with the Panthers. When he was at Temple and even at Baylor, there was always rumors of him going to Notre Dame, possibly if that job opened up. And I wouldn't be surprised if he felt like Notre Dame was a better job than the Carolina Panthers overall. So that'd be another name I'd look out for if Fleck somehow turned them down and Notre Dame didn't want to hire a coordinator But yeah, I mean, I know someone mentioned that John Harbaugh is not a serious candidate. I was just throwing that name out there because there's been rumors. I'm not saying he's a serious candidate, but Baltimore's having his, who knows if Baltimore wants to move on or if he's decided he's done with the NFL. I don't know. But if he did leave for any job, I would say Notre Dame would probably be the job, is all I was really getting at.
Ben mentioned Urban Meyer, and I know that he said way back in his career that the two jobs that he wanted were Ohio State and Notre Dame. So, and he seems like a guy that cares about legacy, which just about everybody does. That's not a knock on Urban Meyer, but just to continue a 3 national championship legacy. And actually, ironically, the only 2 coaches in history who have a better record than Urban Meyer are in black and white photos at Notre Dame. I believe that's Knute Rockne and Frank Leahy. So he's got the best record in college football post World War II. So from a legacy standpoint and tradition and being the purist that he is from a college football standpoint, certainly I guess he would covet the job. And yes, I did say from a college football standpoint. BGO Football Funk here says the LSU job's better. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution. We appreciate that. We got Nathan Erbach and we got Ben Belden here, and they do a heck of a job on Notre Dame post game for us here at the Voice of College Football after every Notre Dame game. So that will be a college football playoff appearance or a bowl game in a New Year's Six game. So join them then. So our guy BGPO Football Fun comes back with Johnny Heisman from Clemson to Georgia Tech. Oh, he's answering my question and he's going like dark ages on me. Okay. Yes, Georgia Tech has a elite program circa 1920. Got it. All right. Okay.
I think your point's very valid. It's very rare to see a coach go from a blue blood to a blue blood. And I'm okay with calling LSU a blue blood in the sense that I think it's a top 10 job.
Yeah.
Just like Notre Dame is. So that is rare. Same with Lincoln Riley to USC. You rarely see that. And the fact that you saw it in 2 days or consecutive days, ironically, both affecting Notre Dame to an extent is crazy to me.
Dave, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that so much. The Notre Dame fan in me is happy that Brian Kelly is leaving as a coach. He was great. I couldn't stand him as a person. The Minnesota fan in me is hoping it's not PJ. So, yeah, I believe that's a Minnesota Dave who calls us from time to time, and he is the very frequent, you hear this all over the place, the dual Minnesota Notre Dame football fan. However that occurred, he's told me, but I don't remember. All right, let's see. I think that's pretty much wrapped it up from the super chat standpoint. We appreciate that so much. Man, I had about 18 other questions in my head, but I've lost track of them at this point.
I will say about PJ.
Yeah, go to it.
I'm kind of with Ben on that one. Yeah, I've never really seen it with Fleck. I mean, I think early on there was some smoke there with Minnesota. I think he's kind of an interesting cat for a lot, for all intent and purposes. But I don't want to say anything's impossible these days. I mean, I think we've seen that within the last couple of days. Like I mentioned, that it's just, you never know. But Fleck to me doesn't seem even like a Notre Dame guy. I think he would rub people in that organization the wrong way a little bit, or in that university the wrong way. So I would find it hard, like in an interview. Like let's just say they interviewed him tomorrow. I think he would. I don't think Jack Swarbrick. I think it would just be a weird dynamic. And so someone like him, like whether or not he would be successful there, I think is besides the point. I just don't think he would ever have the opportunity.
He may bring the boat prop with him in the office with the oars, actually bring it all with him as kind of a symbolism there. See, I'm a PJ Fleck guy. I'm a fan of PJ Fleck, but I totally get if he turns other people off. It's one of those things where you really can't put your finger on it. Some people are like that, and you like them, they kind of click, and other guys they're pretty much the same guy, but for some reason they rub you the wrong way. And it's really not explained. And of course, I've never met the man. I'm just going off documentaries and hearing all the interviews and news conferences and the aura around him. And it seems to be pretty genuine, actually, even though it doesn't seem that way at first glance.